Welcome to Behind the Page, the Eli Marks podcast, with your hosts, John Gaspard and me, Jim Cunningham.
Oh boy, here we are. Final episode, season 5.
Wow. It's hard to believe that 5 seasons have come and gone.
I know. And I believe we teased at the end of our last episode, we have a special guest.
You teased even me.
Yeah, and of course, podcast being what they are, anybody listening knows what it is because they've seen the title of the podcast and they've seen his picture as part of their promotion. So everybody knows that we have a special returning guest, none other than Lance Burton.
Boy, oh boy. What a gift that was initially to get a chance to talk to Lance Burton the first time.
Yeah.
But I was unprepared for the second discussion because he caught me completely leaning by his kindness.
Yes, I think you were almost in tears at one point, and not from laughter.
I'm misting up even right now.
Yeah, just remembering it. Yeah. No point teasing it any further. Why don't we just jump right in and listen to our chat with our greatest fan of all. Before we got into the heartstring tugging that he's going to do, I started up.
It's our heartstrings. He's tugging on everybody.
Yeah, he's yanking on them.
Yeah.
I realized I needed to warn Lance about a particular thing in the latest Eli Marks book, Twisting the Aces. We are so delighted to have you back, and I will warn you that you make a very slight non-speaking cameo in the new Eli Marks book, Twisting the Aces, which takes place in the Magic. It takes place in the Magic Castle, and you are spotted in chapter 1, just doing something for somebody in the lobby, and Eli is completely gobsmacked. He says to Uncle Harry, "That's Lance Burton," and Harry says, "Well, yes, that is. How you doing, Lance?" And he waves it. Anyway, so. David Regal has a speaking part, but you have a non-speaking cameo.
All right. Well, the next one, maybe I'll get some line.
That's right.
In the next book.
You know, if we were to take Billy Toppett and put him in print form, he could certainly show up in the next Eli. In fact, that's not a bad idea. Eli Marks meets Billy Toppett. Huh.
I love it.
Yeah, that's a fun idea. Anyways, the last time we talked to you, you talked about your early love for The Magician and how that inspired you, that particular TV show, and Bill Bixby and how cool he was. I'm just wondering, are there any other unsung TV shows or films or artists, magical or otherwise, that have quietly shaped your approach to storytelling or your approach as a performer?
Well, thank you for having me back on your podcast, and I'm delighted to be back. Before I start, I just want to say a couple of things. The first time I was on the podcast, you contacted me and talking to my assistant, Etta Lynn, and she said, "Hey, they're doing the podcast. They want to know if you'll come on." So I listened to one of the podcasts, and I thought, oh, this is really cool. This is good. These guys are really thoughtful, and it's funny, and it's really looks like fun. And yeah, of course I'll do it. And so I did the first podcast. And then after that, I went back and I started listening to the podcast from season 1, episode 1. Wow. And I just binged through the whole thing, everything you've done and all the books and all the stories that you've done so far, all the interviews. So this time I'm coming back on the podcast. I am now your biggest fan.
Oh, my goodness.
I love the Eli Marks books, and I love consuming them by listening to the podcast because it's a perfect mix to me of conversation and guests and then getting to the story. So, John, I love your writing, and I love the books, and I love this podcast. And also, I just want to say one last thing, and I haven't heard this said on this podcast enough. Jim, you are amazing as an actor reading these books on tape that you are doing. You have a different voice for every character, and you can always tell who's speaking just by the tone of your voice and the way you're talking. And some of the voices, like Mr. Lime is really hard to do, I'm sure, and creepy. It's just, you are doing a stupendous job on reading stories and keeping us viewers all in the story. And so that's it. I just want to say I'm now coming back. I'm a major fan of both of you, and keep up the good work. And the only thing bad I have to say is I will be very sad one day when this podcast is no longer producing new episodes.
Well, as will we. Wow. All right, Jim, I'm going to let you take over.
Oh my God. I
blown
had
away
to
by
take
that.
up my glasses and wipe my eyes. I'm not kidding you.
Oh boy. Okay.
Thank you so much. That was so kind. John, you too.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
That's
and I meant every word of that. And so many times as I'm listening to the podcast and listening to the stories, I go, wow, this is really good. And Jim is so great of an actor.
very kind of you.
And you know, when you see another actor, another performer, you always try to put yourself in that position and say, well, how would I do this part, or how would I do this? But when I listen to you read these stories, I'm like, I have no idea what I would do. I can't even approach this. So good job, everybody, and
Thank you.
keep up the good work.
You know,
That's all
I think
Thanks for listening, everybody. We're going to end it right here. I don't know.
Jim, don't be silly. We have a list of questions for Lance.
I
Rather
know,
than do that, I'd like him just to say how much he likes us for another 40 minutes.
Yeah,
Well, we love you and always have. So
thank you. So anyway, nobody. I haven't heard anybody say all of that. Okay, the question now.
The question is, yes.
What was the question?
I'm going to go back. Yeah. So the question is, are there any, using The Magician as a starting point, are there any other TV shows or films or performers that you look back on and think they quietly shaped who you are as a performer or a storyteller?
Well, when I was a kid, I was crazy about magic, and I got involved in magic very early, 5 years old. So the big one, of course, was the Bill Bixby series, The Magician, and Mark Wilson was on that show. He was the magic advisor. But then I in thinking about it, there was also, and as kids, we like to watch, like Lost in Space and Gilligan's Island, Leave It to Beaver, and we also watched the Daniel Boone show. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah,
Daniel Boone, remember that? There was an episode of Daniel Boone, and it was called Seminole Territory, and I think it was in season 2, maybe episode 17, and you can find it now. You can find it on YouTube, but the guest star that week was Channing Pollock, the great magician, dove magician, card manipulator, Channing Pollock, and he played a character called Fletcher the Flamboyant. And he was a traveling itinerant magician in a little wooden wagon, pulled by a horse, and he did magic in the episode. And it was really cool because when I saw it, of course, I was maybe 6 years old, 7 years old. I didn't know who Channing Pollock was, but years later, when I started hearing about Channing Pollock, and then when I grew up and I met Channing Pollock, and then I realized at some point that was Channing. So I tracked it down, and I had it on VHS, back in the 80s. And I got a chance to talk to Channing. Channing and I became very, very close later in his life, and he actually moved to Las Vegas. And I spent a lot of time with Channing over the years. I asked him about that, being on Daniel Boone. And so he had some interesting stories. For instance, he did one of the tricks he did in the show, besides part of his act, he produced birds and cards. He was trying to figure out what kind of magic he could do. So he told me he went down to Hollywood Magic there in Los Angeles, and he bought a lotta bowl. It's a bowl that you keep pouring water out of, and every couple minutes you go over and it's full of water again. You keep emptying it out. He took this prop, the standard magician's prop, and he took it to the scenic department that was filming the TV series, and he had them paint it so it looked like Indian pottery. And he was able to do that, apparently improvising magic for the Native Americans, and he picked up what appeared to be, one of their pieces of pottery and kept pouring water out of it. And of course, that amazed all of the Native Americans. So yeah, that was, looking back, that was a really cool episode, and it is available on YouTube if you want to go see it.
I will find a link and I will put it in the show notes.
I can't wait. I love that series.
Yeah, we used to love, and of course, being from Kentucky,
sure,
the whole series takes place in Kentucky back in the early 1800s, and because Daniel Boone was the guy that brought the first settlers into Kentucky.
Boonesboro.
Boonesboro, Kentucky. That's right.
Yeah, although it looked suspiciously like Malibu State Park, but it was Kentucky.
Wes Parker ended up with a winery. He was, God rest his soul, but he ended up with a winery in Sonoma, I think.
Wow.
And I get a Western magazine, and there was always Fess Parker ads for his winery and the wine he was producing. So he ended well.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Thanks for that tidbit. Yes. So anyway, as kids, we loved Fess Parker and Daniel Boone.
And just how fortuitous, looking back on your career, that at that age you saw Channing Pollock. I mean, that's...
Yes. And the thing about that episode, I remember at that age, I had just read a book that I found in my school library. I guess I was 7 years old. I don't remember, but in the book it had, magic tricks, and one of the tricks it had was how to produce things out of midair, like playing cards or flowers or whatever. And the method that it was a little children's book. So the method that they showed in the book, which is a ridiculous method when you think about it, is you hang up a black curtain and you have a slit in the curtain, and then you have your assistant with a black glove sticking playing cards through the slit, and you just show your hands empty, and it looks like you're plucking cards out of the air. So FYI, that's not how it's done normally.
But it would work. I'm just thinking about it. It would work.
If you weren't good at sleight of hand, I guess it could work. But in that episode of Daniel Boone, Channing Pollock is producing playing cards out of thin air. Now, of course, Channing was one of the great acts of all time, so he was using sleight of hand. He was doing the real thing. But because I just read that book, I was like, oh, I know how that works. There's a guy with a black glove behind. Never mind that he was doing it, outdoors at the campfire in the episode.
It's reminding me, I know you say that's not a good method, but I remember seeing a magic show somewhere with my niece, who was a very sarcastic young lady, even at that age. She was 8 or 9. And the magician was doing his best, I would say. And she turned to me at one point and she said, "He sure does spend a lot of time standing right up against that black curtain, doesn't he?" Yeah, I think he does, honey.
I love it. Can I ask a question just about tricks in general, and maybe dangerous tricks like the bullet catch, out of concern for young viewers who may pick up a book, I guess, at their library and read, "This is how you do it." In today's world with social media, do you think magicians or performers have a special responsibility to sort of not? But if so, how do you think about that responsibility now?
Well, first of all, I think every magician has to use their own judgment, and everybody gets to make their own decision on this. I'm not telling anybody how to do their act or what to do. I can only speak for myself. And I've noticed that over the years, my thinking on this has changed. When you're younger, you're like, oh yeah, I want to make my magic really edgy and dangerous, and I'll do this and that. And then as you get older, you start thinking, well, do I want some young person to see me do something and then try to emulate it and get into trouble? Yeah, my thinking has changed on that. For instance, at one point, I was really interested in doing the razor blade trick. And in fact, I did it when I was a kid. I used to do where you have a dozen razor blades and you swallow them. You prove they're sharp. You swallow them. You swallow a piece of thread and you show your mouth empty. You drink a glass of water and then you bring them out. The thread and the razor blades are all tied onto the thread. And I thought, oh, that's a very dramatic. That's a very dramatic trick. I could do that. And then I started working on it. I guess I was in my 30s at this point. and I was doing television specials, and I thought, well, this will be something to work on. I could do it in my live show, and I could use it for TV. And then one day I went, wait a minute, do I want little kids seeing me do this and then emulating this and getting themselves hurt? If that had happened and some kid got hurt, I would feel horrible. So I just all of a sudden one day I went, you know what? I'm not going to do that trick, and I stopped. So again, I'm not telling anybody else what to do because certainly people have been successful doing the razor blades, but I just felt like, yeah, I didn't wasn't something I wanted to do.
It's not the message you want to send.
Yeah. Now I have done escapes and things that involved, apparently dangerous situations, escaping from a car that's dropped into a car crusher. So that I can rationalize. I can say, well, a kid's not going to have a crane and a car crusher at his disposal. So yeah, all right, I'll do that.
That makes so much sense. I re-listened to our last chat we had last time, which was great. And like I say, we're thrilled you're back. And one of the things you talked about, which comes up occasionally on the show, along with the name Eugene Berger, is the importance of
take a drink.
Yeah, of having repeat performances, doing the same thing again and again and again, and how that makes you better. And we've also talked about how the Malcolm Gladwell idea of you need 10,000 hours doing something doesn't really work if you're doing it wrong for 10,000 hours. So I think I mentioned before that I only do one card trick. I do wave, and I do it at book events because it ties into the first book very nicely. And I was in a situation twice now where I've had to do it over the course of an hour, 20 times in a row. And I can see immediately the value of that. At the end of that hour, I had learned a lot about that trick and about my own, where my concentration needs to be and how you have to be in the, I mean, it was just a masterclass for that hour doing it. Of course, the problem is, if I'm in that situation again, it would be another year before it would happen. And I'm not really a magician, so I don't count. But for a young magician, finding the venues to repeat something with a live audience again and again in this digital age, I think is just getting harder and harder. And I was wondering if you have any advice for someone starting out, going, how do I get better at this if I don't have anybody to do it for?
Yeah, well, that's the $64,000 question. Where do you go to get your flight time in? And I don't know if it's getting harder or not. It's always been an issue, even when I was a kid. But I noticed when I was 18, I got the job as the magic demonstrator at the magic shop in Louisville, Kentucky. So I noticed just over the course of demonstrating tricks for the customers that would come in on mainly Saturdays to buy magic, like you, if I did the trick, 20 times over the course of a day or two, I started getting really good at it because it became automatic. I didn't have to think about the mechanics of the trick. I didn't have to think about the presentation, the pattern, because that was all repetition that goes into your muscle memory. And then I could just concentrate on the performance and interacting with the person and being able to improvise with the person and going off script because I know I could come back onto the script. So that's why I say it's always great to have that repetition. And what I advise, especially for young people, if you're doing close-up magic, that's relatively easy. You can do close-up magic anywhere and just go do it everywhere you go. School, go to lunch, on the bus stop, wherever you are, do a trick for somebody. If you're a stand-up performer or mainly a stage performer, which I was, that was my main focus, then you got to do a little more work but I would just go out and do free shows. I didn't care about getting paid when I was a teenager. When I was a kid, I would do shows at the church, at the daycare center. I would go out to the park, a picnic, do outdoor shows. I would do shows, for street festivals. I just show up, and I just wanted that time in front of an audience to work on my craft, and eventually, Matt King and I lucked into getting a great summer job where we were working at a little theme park here in Kentucky, and we were doing 3 shows a day, 7 days a week, and we were indoors, which was great. That means I could do my birds and the act that people remember me from when I started my career. And I've talked to every great magician in the world and asked them that same question: how did you get your act perfected? And they all had the exact same story. They had a little place that they found that they could do their act 2 times a day, 3 times a night, whatever it was. Jeff McBride had a little club called Club Ibis in New York City, and he was in there doing 2 or 3 shows a night. Johnny Thompson, a place in Chicago, Eugene Berger had a restaurant there in Chicago. So everybody had their own little place to go and break in their act, and that's the quickest way to become really proficient in magic.
Yeah, it's just the trick is finding that spot. I know
Finding a thing.
Our past guest Nick DeFat found burlesque shows that he could go, and you have to imagine, 16-year-old Nick DeFat looking as nerdy as 16-year-old Nick DeFat did, doing magic in a burlesque show. That's a strong audience to be in front of. Noah Sony, Jim, if you remember, Noah talked about when he was in college, he got the job at the front desk in his dorm. So he would sit there 4 or 5 hours a night as people would come in and make sure they're supposed to be there, and he would just do tricks for them. He had a constantly moving audience. Then he went into restaurant work. But I mean, it's finding that sort of environment where your audience will change often enough that you get some value out of it. That's you got to put your thinking cap on for that, I guess.
One of the things you said, Lance, that resonated with me is I didn't care about money when I was starting out in this business. I had absolutely the burning desire to be on stage, to be in front of people, to be doing things. And I never thought about money. Money wasn't even in the back of my mind at that point. It was just, I want to do this. This is my burning passion. And that leads you to the next step up. But initially, I think maybe the advice of, hey, just go anywhere, do anything. Don't worry about the money. Just if it's your thing, do it. It's a doing thing. And that really, for me as a kid, I couldn't not do it. And that's the only advice I ever give to anybody who asks me, hey, I'd like to do what you do. How do you do it? I say, I can't answer it. All I can tell you is I never wanted to do anything else. I could never picture my life without it. And if you can picture your life without it, then it's not for you, because you have to be in with both feet. And I imagine that listening to you talk about the steps, I just was doing it. Then I got this, then I got this. And that led to, a Vegas show for the love of Pete. But it didn't start with that.
No, it started, I always try to add math to everything. So I counted up all the shows that I did before I did my first Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, because that was the day my career was launched, as far as the public is concerned, is October 28th, 1981. And it was my first Tonight Show, and it was 1,000. I had done that act, that bird act, the birds and cards and candles. I had done that act 1,000 times in front of strangers. And by the time I did my first Tonight Show, and I was only 21 years old. So that tells you I was doing a lot of shows.
Yeah.
And to get that many under my belt. And as I was talking to other magicians, that number, 1,000 shows, that's pretty good number to shoot for. So I always tell young people, it takes 1,000 performances before you have a professional act. I always tell them, You don't need to go to any more magic lectures. You don't need buy another magic trick. You got tricks already. You just need to do them 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And go go out and do 10 shows. Go do 10 shows. You'll learn more than you will coming to hear me lecture.
Yeah, it's true.
Although, if you get a chance to hear Lance lecture, you should.
Let me ask this, Jim. I'm going to jump in here because you just, Lance,
Yeah,
in
go ahead.
saying, I always say to people, because you're asked, I'm sure, the same questions all the time. If you could talk to your younger self, is there something you would tell your younger self that that might help you along the path that you're about to go down?
Well, yeah, I'm sure there is, but I have been binge watching Doctor Who. And I have to tell you, crossing your own timeline is very dangerous. And that can create all kinds of paradoxes.
I don't want these space-time continuum problems.
Yeah. So, for instance, my sword fight with the transposition, that wasn't the first attempt at doing a transposition. That there was a couple before that weren't as successful, but I learned something from each of them. So if I were to go back and just give my younger self the method and how to do that sword fight, I wouldn't have learned what I learned through the failures. So I feel you learn more from failure than you ever do from success. So I think it's good to fail because that's when you're going to learn something important that you can apply to your future.
And even if you gave yourself that knowledge, it doesn't mean you'd know how to use it effectively.
Exactly.
I'm thinking back when Matt King was on the show, one of the things we talked to him specifically about was the cloak of invisibility thing. And he talked about how he came up with that literally years before he used it because he couldn't figure out how to use it. And if you had just told him all those years before, here's how you do it, he wouldn't have had the skills to do it anyway. So, all right, we're not going to mess with the space-time continuum anymore.
But I have a question just about balance then, because I love cups and balls. I love it passionately. Yes. I collect them. I've got many sets. I've got nice sets. I don't do it, but I love that kind of old-timey magic. So how do you balance, because nostalgia for that kind of magic with creating new effects, like your sword fighting routine, for instance?
Well, what I'm always looking for, and what I've learned in my lifetime, is the important thing. It's not whether it's a brand new trick or a classic effect. It's the plot. And for instance, let's take the cups and balls. Since you brought the cups and balls up, now I always loved the cups and balls too. And I fooled around with it over the years, but I never really. It's a really hard trick to learn from the books. When I was a teenager, I was trying to learn the Die Vernon cups and ball routine, and it was really hard to learn it from the book. And to do the Vernon one spin move, forget it. Right. I couldn't even get close to learning it from the book. But now you fast forward, and I'm at the Monte Carlo Hotel. I'm in Las Vegas, and I want to do a close-up segment for a TV special. So, okay, I really want to buckle down and learn the cups and balls. So I had Johnny Thompson sitting there on the couch for hours with Johnny, demonstrating the wand spin while I just sit and mimicked him. That's how I learned it. And it took me forever to learn it. And I rehearsed it for a couple of years before I put it in the show. And what I wound up, there's a couple of things that I made choices with, which in retrospect I think were good choices. That was on one of my TV specials, so it's out there on YouTube also. One of the things that I liked about Cups and Balls, Michael Amar had just come out. He was coming out with his whole complete set of cup and ball books and companion videos. And he gave me an advance copy because he knew I was working on Cups and Balls. And I found something in the Michael Amar thing that I thought, I'm really interested. And that's the idea of doing the Cups and Balls with coffee cups.
Yeah.
Instead of the special made cups, metal cups to do the trick in, they always to me seemed like people would think, oh, something's suspicious, something's gaffed about those cups, which they're not really. It's just that they stack. That's the only gaff thing about them. But to use normal coffee cups, I thought, okay. I went to Walmart and I found coffee cups for 49 cents. And I thought, I'll get 3 different colored cups. And then at the end of the trick, I can give the cups away to the audience.
Nice.
So that's a great way to prove that there are no gaffes to them, because you're giving the props away at the end.
Right.
And then the other thing I was thinking about is, what do you use for the final load? And the classic thing is the fruit. And then I was reading in my research on cups and balls, I was reading about a magician named Pop Krieger, who performed in New York around the early part of the 20th century. And he was busking in bars down in the bad part of town. So this guy was making a living busking, working for tips for drunken sailors and women of the evening. And so what did he use for his final load? He used a live mouse. And so, and in fact, I think he used three live mice, and it was 3 mice under the cups at the end. So I thought, okay, if this guy's making his living working for tips for drunken sailors on short relief, then this has to be the best final load. So that's how I made my decision. So I produced two lemons and then a little mouse at the end of the routine. So that was just my thinking, my process of putting together my cup and ball routine. But to me, it's always about the cup and ball. It's a great plot. It's a great plot. The Miser's Dream is the greatest plot in magic. If you had real magic powers, would you spend it finding a card someone had touched 3 minutes ago? Or would you just reach up in the air and find some money anytime you were hungry or thirsty? Of course, the money, that's the greatest plot in magic. So to me, it's always about the plot. And I also add, I love oddball plots. I love kind of plots that take left-hand turns that are sort of unusual plots. So
can you think of an example?
Well, like the backstage with the magician trick. This was a stage illusion that was first performed by Dante, and he explained to the audience that he's going to show them how to do a magic trick. And if you watch the show from the front, there's no way you can see how the trick works, but if you were backstage, you would be able to. So I'm going to perform this trick backwards. And he turns around, the curtain opens, and there's a painted drop, and it's a painting of an audience in a theater. And he performs the whole trick with his back to the audience, and the audience sees exactly how it works. And they're going, oh, okay, I get it. And then at the end, boom, there's a surprise ending. And the effect was a completely different effect than they thought it was going to be. So they wound up being amazed, but it was the journey they go on, thinking they're seeing how the trick works. I love that, and I do a version of the backstage with the magician. In fact, I have, I think, like 6 different drops of various sizes. And when we go out on the road, I carry 3 drops with me. We have the large size, which is like 60 foot wide and 30 foot tall, that we used at the Monte Carlo. I have the medium one, which is like 40 foot wide and 15 or 20 foot tall, that I used at the Hacienda. And I even have a small one, which is like 10 foot tall and 15 foot wide, that I've used in kind of pipe and drape situations.
Okay, I got to ask. I know this is off the beaten track here, but I follow you on social media, and I love seeing when you guys are on the road and you have great photos of you. But I never see a line of trucks behind you. How much are you? What are you bringing when you go? And why are you not in the Twin Cities soon?
Well, first of all, we would love to come up there, and I think we will eventually get up in your area. The show travels. My buddy Keith West has a 40-foot trailer, which he pulls in his truck, in his diesel truck. So the whole show fits in there, and that's my illusions and his illusions. And we also have Michael Goudeau and Fielding West, which they don't have that many props, but they're on the truck as well. And then we will fly into the city, or I've got my bus now. I've got a little tour bus, and we take off, and everybody meets usually in the first city if we're doing multiple cities. So maybe we'll meet on a Friday in city A, do a show, and then get on the bus and truck and go to city B, and on Saturday, and then maybe one on Sunday. So
Gosh dang it! Would
That's
you
your
come to
dream, Jim.
Minneapolis,
That is your
please?
dream, is to be in
Oh
a
my
bus and truck
goodness!
magic
yeah,
show.
bus and
That's
truck
exactly
magic
what I
show.
want. Yeah. If only I were good at magic, and had a bus. One of those two things I could probably solve. Getting a bus doesn't sound that hard, but being good at magic is really difficult. And you've had some, you mentioned Johnny Thompson, Mark Wilson came up already. Is there a lesson or a piece of wisdom from them that you find yourself returning to?
You know, yes, I mean Johnny. I spent probably the most amount of time with Johnny of any of my friends and mentors. But my first great mentor was a guy named Harry Collins, and he was the first magician I ever saw. And I have a photograph here of here's so you guys can see. I know you can't see this listening on the podcast, but there I am about 16 years old, and that's Harry Collins. And we're doing a show somewhere. Probably that was taken backstage. We're probably doing a school show. Harry was a terrific magician from Glasgow, Kentucky. He performed all over the state, and he was in the Marines, and he got wounded in Korea, and then they put him in special services, and he toured with the entertainers, the Bob Crosby's This Is the Army show, and so he did that, and then he came back after that, and he worked at Frito-Lay, the Frito-Lay plant in Louisville as a salesman, but he did magic. And eventually, Frito-Lay created a job for him. The corporate office took notice, and he was no longer in sales. He was their goodwill ambassador, and they sent him to every snack food convention and the Texas State Fair every year, and they kept him on the road 50 weeks a year doing magic full time. So he was a corporate magician, but he only worked for one corporation. The way I met him, my mother worked at the Frito-Lay plant making potato chips. So it was the Christmas party for all the employees. And so I was 5 years old. I was the kid that went up on stage for the Miser's Dream. And that was my first exposure to magic. But as I got older and Harry became my mentor and took me under his wings, we would go to magic conventions. We'd go to the IBM convention or up to Abbott's, and we would watch the shows, and then we would discuss what we had seen. And Harry's advice was always really solid and really kind of meat and potatoes. We would see a performer, and then after the show, Harry would say, well, he was very good, with his card manipulations and his coin manipulations. The only problem, he just did it too long. And I went, yeah, I guess he did, didn't he? It went on a little too long. He said, yeah. He says, listen, do it, prove you can do it, then do something else. And that was his advice as far as magic. Don't keep doing it till everybody's bored. And really, if you think about it, that's good advice for a magic show. Always keep it interesting, keep it moving, have a surprise. Don't keep doing the same thing till everybody's, falling asleep.
Might be good advice for a podcast too.
Hey. Eugene Berger, when I was working on Hauntings with him, there was a great picture in Spirit Theater of him with a Thayer wrapping hand.
Yes.
And I said, in the second season, I said, I really want to do, I found a wrapping hand here locally that I can borrow, and I really want to do a routine with a wrapping hand. And Eugene said, the problem with the wrapping hand is this. The first time it wraps, it's astounding. The second time it wraps, it's interesting. The third time it wraps, people are looking at their watch.
Yeah.
So we got to conceive a routine where it only needs to wrap once or maybe a second time to confirm, but it's only going to wrap twice. And at the time, I was like, I want to spell out the name of a, you know, he said, no, stop, don't. That's wrong. It's 2 times and that's it. And so he helped me conceive this routine about Houdini that I did for years. And the thing only wrapped twice.
That's it. See,
yeah,
that's
right.
the problem of diminishing returns.
Right.
That's what we call it. And it's prevalent in every type, even, a dove act. First dove you produce is like, whoa, where'd that come? Second one's like, man, and then the third one, now they're burning you. They want to see where that dove's coming from. So it better be good. It better be unexpected. It better be on the offbeat. And so how do you overcome the diminishing returns? I remember talking with Johnny one time about another performer who was doing doves. And the guy was opening his dove act by doing the double dove production, which was invented by Channing Pollock. You have a big scarf, you tie a knot in the scarf, the knot disappears. You tie another knot in the scarf, you put it in your teeth, you show your hands, the scarf empty, you pull on the scarf, boom, there's 2 birds come out of the scarf, 1 in each hand. Great trick, really clean, really visual. He was opening with that, and Johnny had to go to him. The guy was asking for Johnny's advice, and Johnny said, no, you don't open with the double. That's what you use to get over diminishing returns. Okay. So what I just said, first dove, everybody's, oh, what's a dove? And the second dove, oh, another one. Now the third one, they're burning you. Okay. It better be really good. It better be offbeat. Now what do you go? Where do you go from there? Okay. Then you ring in the double dove production. Boom. Now you 2 at 1. Okay. You keep topping yourself.
Right.
So it's exactly what you're talking about. How do you get over diminishing returns? Yep. That's the question we ask on just about every trick we do.
I think all of us could benefit from Eugene Berger's voice in the back of our head saying, no, stop, don't do that.
Yeah. Did I tell you my how I met Eugene Berger?
I don't think so. And if you
I don't know that story.
I want to hear it again.
1981, I just moved out to Los Angeles. I'd done 2 Tonight shows. I was living there in Hollywood. My neighbor was Max Maven. We were living in the same apartment building. And so one day, Max says to me, Lance, I want you to meet a friend of mine from Chicago. He's staying at the Magic Hotel. I said, okay, Max. We walk over there with me and Max and my girlfriend at the time. And we go in and we knock on the door and Eugene opens the door. And Max says, Eugene, this is Lance Burton. And we come in and Eugene was very friendly. And Max says, Eugene, can you show Lance something? He goes, yes, of course. And we sit down and Eugene does a performance for us. And, he lights the candle and he does the thread, burning the thread, the gypsy thread, and he does 2 or 3, 4 tricks. And everything he did was absolutely exquisite, just beautiful magic and well thought out and dramatic and funny. And he was just amazing. I'd never heard the name Eugene Berger before, had no idea who he was, totally kind of unknown. And we walk out at the end of that. And I said, I can't believe this guy is not a national name, that he is not on national TV every week. This guy is so good. And so then a couple of years after that, Eugene starts writing, putting out some of his magic books. And of course, now those become really popular because they're very insightful. And of course, all the magicians start to know who he is. And then he starts appearing at magic conventions. Then he starts popping up on television shows. And Eugene wasn't young. He was a grown man at this point. And then I remember at one point, Eugene was working with Jeff McBride, and they were doing their mystery school. And they were in Las Vegas, and I was having dinner with Eugene, and he was so excited. He says, Lance, I have to tell you why I'm so excited. I said, why is that, Eugene? He says, I'm 65 years old, and next month, I'm going to make my stage debut in Atlantic City. And he was going to appear as a guest star in Jeff McBride's show in Atlantic City. And Eugene was so excited. And he was 65. And this was his debut in a casino on stage. So Eugene was just the loveliest man. And he really helped me over the years with magic. And discussing magic with. In fact, one of my go-to tricks that I carry around is the B wave or the wave. And I'm not quite sure what the proper pronunciation is. John, I know you call it
I say
wave.
wave.
I
say
call
wave.
it B wave. The reason I call it B wave is in the back of my mind. I just think Max Maven it was a little joke in his mind to get everybody to say wave.
Well, mission accomplished.
And so I was like, I think Max was just messing with us with the naming of this.
Well, I would that certainly fit his personality. You know, I think it was the last time we talked, you turned me on to the jumbo size version of that,
Yes.
which is a nice go-to to have when you want to do it for a slightly lower. I was not aware
Yes.
that was available. We were very lucky here to meet Mac when we did Sunday Night Magic, and we also had Eugene here. And Jim, I'm sure you will agree with me that one of the most emotional and memorable moments we shared was having dinner with Max and having him talk about his last phone call with Eugene. And the power of that moment. And I would remember Eugene saying that when he would stay with Max in L.A., he'd say, I'd go to bed and I'd get up, and Max would say, I've invented 3 things. Let me show some to you.
Yeah. Just being Max's neighbor, I got to see all kinds of new things all the time. So I miss those. You think back all the years, all the people, that we've lost, Max and Eugene and Johnny and Channing, and with Norm Nielsen, we've Ravine, we've just lost a lot of people. Well, I guess that's what happens. That's what happens when you get older.
Yeah.
I don't like it, but that's the way it is. I actually saw your Vegas show with Eugene and Max Maven and met you after the show.
Which is at the Monte Carlo Hotel?
I think it was at the Monte Carlo at that point. And I had gone out to Vegas for one of the mystery schools that that Eugene was involved with Jeff McBride, and part of the perk was you'll get to go to see Lance Burton's act, and then we all got to meet you afterwards. Is there anything about that period in your life or doing a Vegas show that you find yourself missing from time to time, or nostalgic about?
Well, that was 30 years of my life performing in Las Vegas. So that was a lot of shows, and when you're in the middle of it, it's like being in the eye of a hurricane. You can't really see the whole thing. You only see everything going by.
Yeah.
But the thing that I loved was like the night that Jeff and Eugene would come and bring their mystery school, the classes in, and then come hang out afterwards in the green room and get to chat with the students. That was always fun, and the students always asked great questions and really made you think about what you're doing, just because it's a fresh eyes on your show. But the thing that I found that I missed the most once I retired, the thing that I really, really didn't know I was going to miss, but did miss, is the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And when I walked off stage in 2010, I didn't do any shows for 7 years.
Wow.
I was so exhausted of all those years of show after show. I just completely quit doing that. I shot the movie, Billy Top It. And every now and then I would get up at a charity event or something and do 10 minutes. And every time I would get up in front of an audience, it was like seeing an old friend. I was like, oh, yeah, I remember you guys. Yeah, it's good to see you again. So now, being retired, I kind of have the best of both worlds. I'm back on the farm in Kentucky. I'm surrounded by the animals, and I'm out in the rural area of the state. So I'm surrounded by nature. And then once a month, I get in the bus and we go off for a couple of days. And I get to play the star for a couple of days. And then I come back to the farm and have to go split wood in the winter. And it's fun.
What a great answer that is. Garrison Keillor's last performance in A Prairie Home Companion, when he was retiring for the first or second time, I don't know which. He said to the audience, I don't know what I'm going to do without you. You are my only audience. You will find something to fill your entertainment void, but I only have you, and I'm saying goodbye to you, and I don't know what I'll do
Exactly.
without you. And that
Exactly.
really struck a chord with me as a performer. Is like,
Yeah.
don't ever take that audience for granted, because
No, never take a break. And I only realized once I started coming back and doing performances in retirement, I only then did I have the realization that relationship that I have with the audience, that is sadly my longest, most important relationship.
yeah, I,
Because,
I
you know,
it's
girlfriends come and go, or
yes.
people come into your life and leave. But that audience has been there for 50 years. So
Yeah.
that's my longest relationship.
And there's a level, once you tumble to that, I think there's a level of love and respect that you can only have when you realize how important uh, they are to who you are.
Yes, and my favorite part of the shows now is the after show, the meet and greets, because I hear amazing stories from people. I was up in Washington State a couple years ago, and a guy comes up to me, grown man, comes up in the line for the meet and greets, and he says, "Lance, when I was 8 years old, my mom brought me to see you in Las Vegas, and I went up on stage and I put my hand on the bird cage, and the bird cage disappeared. And my daughter, she's 8 years old, and she went up on stage tonight and she put her hand on the cage. And here's my mom who brought me to see you back in the 1990s." And it was like, wow, that's, to me, that's amazing. And that meant something to that guy. He remembered all those years, that experience of being on stage. And when he saw I was coming near his hometown, he bought tickets and he brought his daughter and he brought his mom. And it was a big night for them. That's, to me, that's the real magic.
Yeah, and it certainly meant something to him. But think, hearing you tell the story, it obviously meant something
Yeah,
to you too.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think looking at what you're doing now and retiring when you did, I mean, I worked at the same place for 30 years. I didn't have the same pressures that you had. Neither one of us got a watch when we left, but you had the emotional maturity to go, that's done. I can't do that anymore. And then you recharged, and then you took charge of, okay, here's the things that I love. That's what I'm going to do moving forward. I'm just going to do the parts I love. And that's you won.
Yeah,
Case you won.
that's essentially what I was going to say, John. Is you at this point you have won the lottery,
Well, I
because
was thinking back to what Teller said to us. If you're paying your mortgage and you've got food on the table and you're doing what you love, you've won.
there it
That's
is.
right. Yeah, there's two types of artists. There's the starving artist and those that eat regularly. So if you pay your rent at the end of the month, you're a successful artist.
Well, he certainly is a successful artist, but it's a good advice that if you're covering your costs, you're successful.
As a struggling artist, it's sometimes very difficult to swallow that, but I think it's true. However, and you try not to compare and contrast, but as an artist, there are things that my contemporaries from high school and college are much farther along the, let's say, monetary trail than I am, and it's just part of this lifestyle that it's the life we have chosen. And it's just, that's what it is. And it's sometimes really helpful to hear somebody of Lance Burton's caliber, or Teller, who you referenced in the interview, saying, hey, if you can pay your bills at the end of the month, you're successful.
Yeah.
And that's really good to hear as a guy like me.
Yeah, you can't be comparing yourself to other people.
Yeah, it's a stupid thing to do, but how do you stop it?
Well, you just do what Chevy Chase did in Caddyshack when he refused to write down his score.
What did you shoot today?
Oh, I don't keep score, Judge.
Oh, well, how do you measure yourself with other golfers?
By height.
And he's always going to win that because he's a pretty tall guy. I also like, although I'm sure someone who's studying magic wouldn't like it as much, his thought that you have to do it 1,000 times, which comes up quite a bit in next season in Twisting the Aces. That is something Harry says to someone who's showing him a trick about the number of times he needs to do it before he'll really, really have it.
Right.
But that's just the table stakes, as they say. You've got to really put in the work to get that done.
Yeah, and even when we discussed a long discussion about self-working tricks, we arrived, thanks to our guest, at the fact that there is no such thing as a self-working trick. You still have to put in, even if the method is simple, you still have to make it magical, and so.
Tie in the plot. That's what he's talking about.
Exactly.
It has to have a plot, which takes us back to what David Williamson told us about, I don't know how long ago. This is a great podcast. Two old guys can't even remember what somebody said 2 years ago, but he talked about, if you remember, when he was working at the Magic Castle with a bunch of buddies, and their competition with each other was they would go to the nearby magic store and each one would buy for the other one their closing trick.
Oh.
And then to take it and make it worthy of being the closing trick in their act. And he said it was a lot of work. But he learned from that how to make the plot the thing and not the method, the thing.
Yeah. Difficult lesson, but it absolutely crucial to success long term. The method or anything really in this business that we're in has very little to do with capturing an audience and holding them. The method is the last thing, maybe, that you need to get to that place where an audience is in the palm of your hand. And you know what? I completely agree when he said it's, my relationship with the audience is my longest relationship. People come and go, but the audience is always there. I get that 1,000%. The idea that how important that relationship is to somebody who is a performer cannot be understated. And so it's always nice to hear things that I think in my own head, then said by someone who's a genius. It's very validating to hear somebody at his level say it's the most important relationship in my life, because I get that. I get the idea that the audience has to be, you have to treat it like a love relationship, and if you don't, you're cutting yourself off at the knees, I think.
Right.
And that relationship with an audience cannot be taken lightly. I think if we asked anybody who's at the top of their game about that, they would say that relationship is sacred in a way, and I have to hold up my end of that relationship so that they hold up their end, and it cannot in any way, shape, or form be overstated how important that is if you want to be successful. And the more effort you put into that relationship, the bigger and larger you can become. And I have no illusions about where I am in terms of the arc of being wildly successful or a household name. I know where I'm at, but the relationships I do have with my ongoing audiences at the Feast of Fantasy for 35 years, at the Phantom's Feast for 15 years, at Wonderful Life for 19 years. Many of those audience members have crossed over, as in my corporate work, have crossed over out of being an audience member and become a friend. We trade texts, we trade messages, and that is part of the joy that comes with taking the audience and that relationship seriously. Yeah.
It's
But
pretty amazing.
I was tickled to have Lance say, "Oh, I remember you. It's nice to see you all again." Because there is certainly something to that performers. I think if you are a performer, a regular performer, you will get that. I got that immediately. It was like, okay, I get that. Yes, of course, that's right. So I really enjoyed, and of course, the incredible things he said about your book and the audio books. Just so generous, so kind, so everything. Eugene used to say, when you see Lance Burton on stage, he is a god. And he was in those shows. He was a god, Eugene used to say. And then when you talk to him, you find he's the nicest man in the world. Yep. All of that sort of huge stage persona just drops away, and he's this really charming, sweet, gentle man.
Down home guy.
Yeah, couldn't have enjoyed this extra session of our podcast any more than I did. It was terrific for me. So again, my thanks to you, because without you, I'm sitting alone in the basement.
Well, and our thanks to Lance for reaching out and wanting to chat again. That was just a delight. I love that. I love that. I love that. I'm handing you a segue.
Hand it to me again.
No, I like it. The handing it is part of the thing. Jim, I said, I love that. King of the segues, talking to the prince of segues.
I dropped the ball because I was verklempt about all the nice things that Lance said about us. And so, yes, indeed, it is time for I Love That. And you know what? You go first.
I am going to go first. And this is sort of a convoluted one in that there's a couple different layers to it. But the simplest thing is it's Oscar Wilde's play, The Importance of Being Earnest, which I think is maybe my favorite play.
Really?
If edited properly. I don't know. I am just endlessly entertained by some versions of it. Now, obviously, I wasn't there when it was first performed. There was a 1952 version of a film with Michael Redgrave and Margaret Rutherford playing Miss Prism and Dame Edith Evans as Lady Bracknell. And because Michael Redgrave was a big name, they rejiggered the opening of the story so it starts on him when it's not supposed to start on him. It's supposed to start on the guy playing Algernon. And it's probably an accurate representation of the way it was done at that time. But the movie is a little stodgy, a little slow. Margaret Rutherford, who has many fine qualities, cannot play the meek and mild Miss Prism. She's supposed to be terrified of Edith Evans. She could place kick Edith Evans 50 yards if she needed to. I mean, she's just not right as Miss Prism. She was a big star at the time, and that's why they did it. I prefer the second film version. Well, the second one that I know of. There's other ones out there that was done in 2002 with Colin Firth and Rupert Everett and Francis O'Connor. The great Tom Wilkinson
there's
plays
some great
Reverend
people in that.
Chasuble. Anna Massey plays Miss Prism the way it should be played. Anna Massey being Raymond Massey's daughter, Raymond Massey playing Jonathan in Arsenic and Old Lace in the film.
Old Lace, sure.
He's so good in that. And then Judi Dench as Lady Bracknell.
Dame Judi Dench.
Dame Judi.
England. Grand homes. Perfect manners. Bucolic outings. But this isn't Jane Austen's England. This one is, dare we say, wild.
How perfectly delightful.
Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest.
I hope you are behaving very well.
Well, I'm feeling very well.
That's not quite the same thing.
Miramax proudly presents the outrageous, romantic,
Ernest.
Gwendolyn, we must get married at once.
classic comedy,
It has always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Ernest.
about morals,
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she's pretty and to someone else if she's plain.
manners,
They seem to be eating muffins.
and other matters of importance.
Are your parents living?
I was found.
Found?
In a handbag.
I didn't expect that.
Starring Rupert Everett,
What a charming boy. I like his hair so much.
Colin Firth,
Mother. No, Mr. Worthing. I am unmarried.
I cannot deny that is a serious blow.
Francis O'Connor,
You're false and deceitful.
Reese Witherspoon,
You seem to be the visible personification of absolute perfection.
and Academy Award winner Judi Dench.
Never speak disrespectfully of society. Only people who can't get into it do that.
When it comes to love, it's important to be faithful.
Ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any girl I've ever met since I met you.
Yes.
It's important to be truthful.
Cecily's the sweetest, dearest, prettiest girl in the whole world.
But there's nothing as important as being earnest.
My own Ernest.
The importance of being earnest.
And that's an excellent version. They don't fop it up. It is of its time, but is still very modern and moves very quickly. They just use the best bits. But my favorite version of it
There's another one?
There's another one. There's a radio version that they did. I think they did it around or before the movie. You can find it on Audible, The Importance of Being Earnest, with Michael Sheen, Martin Clunes, and again, Judi Dench as Lady Bracknell. And
Dame Judi Dench.
Sorry, Dame Judi. And it is... They've taken stuff from the 3-act version and the 4-act version, and so it's really crisp and moves along. And say what you will about Martin Clunes, that man can throw away a line when it needs to be thrown away. And it's done for radio, so they're not adding weird stuff to it, but you get a sense of they're in a room or they're moving through a room or they're in this location, that location. But they really, really connect, particularly Michael Sheen and Martin Clunes, because they have a lot of scenes together and it really, really works well.
In order to get up to town, I've always pretended I have a younger brother of the name of Ernest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear Algy, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. What you really are is a Bunburyist. I was quite right in saying you were a Bunburyist. You're one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother called Ernest in order that you may be able to come up to town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury in order that I may go into the country whenever I choose.
What nonsense.
It isn't nonsense. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinarily bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you at Willis's tonight, for I've been really engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know, you are absurdly careless about sending out invitations. It's very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people as much as not receiving invitations.
You had much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the kind. To begin with, I dined there on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do dine there, I'm always treated as a member of the family and sent down with either no woman at all or two. In the third place, I know perfectly well whom she will place me next to tonight. She will place me next to Mary Farker, who always flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. That is not very pleasant. Indeed, it is not even decent. And that sort of thing is enormously on the increase. The amount of women in London who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly scandalous. It looks so bad. It's simply washing one's clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed Bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about Bunburying. I want to tell you the rules.
I am not a Bunburyist at all.
It's just a charming version of it. I keep coming back to the importance of being earnest when I made my movie Ghostlight, and if I remember, I'll put a link in that. The actors in that movie are staying in a community theater overnight to look for ghosts, but they are doing the importance of being earnest, and the movie opens with the ending of The Importance of Being Earnest. The second book in the Como Like Players series, Dying to Audition, everyone in that is auditioning for The Importance of Being Earnest. It's just a witty, funny play. It's a farce, but it's a realistic farce. Everything is set up beautifully and pays off beautifully. Anyway, I will put links to what I can for all those things, but my preferred version is on Audible, and it's The Importance of Being Earnest with Michael Sheen and Martin Clunes.
Well, I will listen to that.
Yeah.
I love the play. I've seen it 1,000 times over the years, but you can always see it and learn something because, as you say, there's no definitive version. There's
exactly.
Every version has a little bit of this or a little bit of that, and you can go, oh.
Yeah,
I'll take this. I like that. I would absolutely listen.
I saw just as a sidelight, I saw Rainn Wilson do it at the Guthrie Theater before The Office. And it was notable because it was the return to the Guthrie of Barbara Bryn. And people who don't live in the Twin Cities would know, but Barbara Bryn was the Guthrie star for years and years. She was a little bird-like woman. She plays the mother-in-law of Mozart, I think, in Amadeus. But she was just a remarkably funny little actress. And because she was returning and hadn't been at the Guthrie for a while, it was a big deal. And Lady Bracknell has an entrance toward the beginning of Act One where she comes in with her daughter, Gwendolyn. And she's announced by Lane the butler, Lady Bracknell and Gwendolyn Fairfax. And then she walks in and she would receive a tremendous ovation from the audience as soon as she stepped on stage. And I was talking to Julie Briskman, who played Gwendolyn, who was also in my movie Beyond Bob. And I said, that was an amazing moment. She said, well, the first time it happened, when we went off stage, Barbara turned to me and said, I'm so embarrassed that they stood up when I got on stage. And Julie said to her, are you sure it was for you and not for me?
Very nice.
Very, very nice. Very, very nice.
That's the way to keep people humble.
Yes. So that's what I love. What do you love?
I just completed watching a series on HBO called Task. Have you
I've
watched
heard of it? I think I saw a preview for it and I thought it looked a little on the rough side.
It is. There's just no two ways about it. It's bloody and gritty, and but Mark Ruffalo is fantastic in everything I've ever seen him do.
I need you out in the field. There's been a spate of home invasions. At least 9 houses have been hit. They want me to set up a task force. State Trooper Elizabeth Stover, Sergeant Aaliyah Clinton, CD Anthony Grasso.
It's not exactly a wealth of experience.
We need to find this crew.
And I really enjoyed the series, but here's the deal. So my son, Jake, and my son-in-law, Louis, were the guys who recommended it to me. Oh, you got to watch this. You're going to love it. You love him, and you're going to love it. So I watched it, and it is compelling, and I stayed up very late one night because it's cliffhanger after cliffhanger after cliffhanger, and I watched it till the end of the series. And it was about 3 a.m, and I went to bed, and I got up the next morning, and I texted him, the guys, and said, hey, fellas, thanks for the tip on this. I just finished it. It's great. Obviously, there's a season 2. And my son texted me, and he said, really? I think they sort of wrapped everything up, Dad. And I said, no, they didn't. And then my son-in-law said, yeah, I guess you could go a season 2 if you tried to, follow this thread. But otherwise, I think it's pretty wrapped up. And I said, how can you say that? It's not wrapped up at all. The money is still with the wrong person. There's the 2 really bad guys are still out there. And the last thing Ruffalo says to one of the characters is, I'm coming for you. And the character says, come along then. How can you say it's wrapped up? And so they kind of let it go. And we were having dinner a few nights later to celebrate a birthday, and we were talking about it, and my son said, are you sure you've watched the entire series, Dad? And I said, yeah, I watched it. It rolls one into the other. You just sit and it goes. And he said, tell me what happened to this character. And I said, well, he's being fostered by Mark Ruffalo. And my son-in-law said, I don't think you've seen the last episode.
Yeah.
So I had not seen the last episode. I was right. If it ended where I thought it ended, they were obviously leaving windows open and doors open for a season 2. When I watched the final episode, most of the things that were left wide open were closed tightly.
Well, you can just call that episode season 2, and then you're done.
Exactly. But it's really very good if you have no problem with blood and guts, because there is a fair amount of that in there. But it's also, you're not quite sure who's the good guy is, the bad guy is, through about half of it. You can't quite figure out what's that? No, I can't believe that any of these people would be a spy or a turncoat. It's really good. It's very good. And I love Mark Ruffalo. I love him. I think his performances in everything I've ever seen him in, he is so good and so just absolutely watchable. That's my I love that.
And you would recommend
Past.
people watch every episode?
Yeah, I would watch it to the end. If I had advice for you, I'd say make sure that you watch all of it before you weigh in with the people who with me, for instance, because I'm recommending it. If you do, watch it all before we talk, because it'll be important.
We had that happen with an Australian series, which may turn up and I love that later, where what I thought was the final episode ended, and I went, there's 6,000. How can you possibly end it here? And then it goes, oh, there is. Okay, never mind. There is one more.
Yeah,
and then
it's all good.
And they definitively wrapped it up, and then added a little thing that makes you go, oh, next season. Anyway, I'm not sure I'll watch it. Task, because it sounds a little harsh. I may instead just rewatch the Importance of Being Earnest.
Yeah, you could do that. Either way.
There is a bloody version of The Importance of Being Earnest.
That's the one. Is Mark Ruffalo in it? Because I'd watch it if he is.
No, it's Keanu Reeves. And they took the John Wick series and just did one more. The Importance of Being John Wick, it's called. Well, normally you would read a chapter.
I would read a chapter. We're out of chapters. What are we going to do?
Well, as a special treat in this episode, which is our final episode of season 5, we're going to listen to the prologue to the latest book in the Eli Marks series, Twisting the Aces, which was written by me and the first time we've had a co-writer, Michael Varma. And we can explain more of that later, but here's what happens in the prologue to Twisting the Aces.
Prologue. The tennis match of questions and answers was making my neck sore and my head ache. On my left, the police detective was serving up the questions, and on my right, the suspect was returning service. Inquiry, reply, repeat. Inquiry, reply, repeat. I started to feel dizzy as my head spun left, then right, then back again. I looked over at Harry, who was following the exchange with what appeared to be a relaxed interest, but I knew him better than that. Question, response. Question, response. And then what sounded like one final question. Okay, tell me this. Do you know anyone who would want to murder the victim? The suspect paused, and then she stammered out a, "No, I don't." That response, and the fact that it felt like the room was heating up, flashed me back to a moment from my childhood. It was a hot summer day, maybe August, but blisteringly hot. I had just told a little white lie to my Uncle Harry about a small accident in the magic shop. He knew it was a lie, and he knew that I knew that he knew it was a lie. He stared down at me. I was awash in shame. It was a horrible feeling. I vowed never to tell another lie, which was kind of ironic because magicians are known for telling lies, or as I prefer to call them, creative explanations. I suddenly felt a sympathetic response for the suspect because I knew she had just told a lie. Seeing he had reached a dead end, the detective told the suspect she could go, and then he turned to answer his phone. I watched her heading toward the door, becoming more of a blur the farther away she got. In the corner of the seance room was Harry Houdini's original metal milk can, the prop that started his career as an escape artist. I tried to focus on one of the large padlocks that fastened the lid in place. My eyes just couldn't quite dial in the details. All I saw was a big glob of gray. I felt the dribble of sweat run down my right cheek and along my jawline. I reached for my handkerchief to dab at the runaway perspiration, and then I heard a buzzing in my ears. No, not in my ears, between my ears. Wasn't that where my brain was? I could hear Harry next to me. He was saying something, but the words weren't sounding like words. He moved a little closer. I must have looked as dazed and confused as I felt, because Harry very slowly and loudly said, "Are you all right, Eli? You look a little pale." Yeah, I could use a glass of water. It's a bit hot in here." Another bead of perspiration trickled down my face. I patted myself dry and loosened my tie. I had forgotten I was even wearing a tie. I never wore a tie. Why was I wearing a tie? Harry stood up to get a glass of water and then turned to look back at me. He was very fuzzy. Or was it me that was fuzzy? Perhaps we were both fuzzy. Cutting through the fog, I could hear Harry, his voice sounding right on the edge of panic. "Eli, I think you might have been poisoned." As I started to pass out, oddly, only one thought flashed through my addled brain. Well, for once in my life, I'm passing out not because I'd been hit on the head. If nothing else, that felt like progress. Then, everything went dark.
So once again, Eli passes out. That's the problem when you have a hero in a series. You can't actually kill him, but you have to incapacitate him sometimes. And passing out, the prologue just gives you sort of a hint of what's going to happen in season 6 when we will listen to, assuming Jim is willing to read them all,
Yes,
all the chapters of Twisting the Aces. And we're going to do that in every one of the episodes. You'll hear a chapter in the correct order. That would be wrong of us. And we're not going to leave out the last chapter like Jim had with
think of the
Task.
fun that people could have.
And in the odd episodes, we will chat with folks who are passionate about magic, but have chosen not to make a career of it. Earlier this season, I asked for some recommendations on that, and I was inundated with people who are passionate about magic, but don't make a living at it. And so in our odd episodes in season 6, we will listen to those interviews. And first up will be with Michael Varma, the co-writer on Twisting the Aces.
I can't wait to talk to him. He's going to be acting, I guess, as a special podcast correspondent in season 6. And
that's right.
Twisting the Aces takes place entirely within the walls of the Magic Castle. Michael is going to be conducting interviews with people connected in one way or another with the Magic Castle. I've been there. You never have.
I never have, and could not have written a book without Michael's true insider knowledge of not only how is it laid out, but how does it run. Because there's something that happens quite early in the book that throws the castle into chaos, and he's able to, with his knowledge of how things happen there, help put together a path for how they get through their evening at the castle. So that'll be a lot of fun. Michael's a good interviewer and a good guy, and the list of people he's sent to me so far is pretty impressive. So that'll be very interesting.
I can't wait.
Non-professional, professional magicians, and folks connected with the Magic Castle. Be sure, if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the episodes. And then next time we will listen to Chapter 1 of Twisting the Aces in episode 601 of the Eli Marks podcast. Until then, take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening, folks.
This has been Behind the Page, the Eli Marks podcast, with your hosts, John Gaspard and Jim Cunningham. Produced by Albertsbridge Books at Grass Lake Studios. Find this podcast and all the books in the Eli Marks series at EliMarksMysteries.com. That's ELIMARKS Mysteries.com. And thanks for listening.